back to another Grow Together conversation. My name is Anna McGuire, and I'm still scratching my head that we are in the midst of August. How is that even remotely possible? The school year is upon us. Maybe you live in a part of a country that school has already been in session for a few weeks, and maybe you're in a part of the country where it's getting ready to start soon. Whatever it may be, welcome to the conversation today. Today's conversation is from Lindsey Croston, and she's going to be interviewing 3 students who are a part of Southeastern or were a part of Southeastern University in a variety of ways. This conversation is a little bit different than usual. The conversation is going to be with 3 women who, one, she is in the Master's of Divinity program at Southeastern. Another, she just finished her Master's of Arts at Southeastern. And then another, she just graduated Southeastern a year ago. So it's going to be a more reflective conversation of their time in the trenches of preparing for ministry and their reflections on heading back into this school year. I think you're going to enjoy this conversation. So welcome with me, Lindsey, the amazing Hope, Callie, and Karissa.
Welcome to the Network for Women Ministers podcast, Campus Edition. My name is Reverend Lindsey Croston, and I am the Central Florida campus rep. And I am excited to be here with some ladies from Southeastern University today. We've got ladies who are in the trenches, freshly out of the trenches, and who have been out of the trenches for a little bit. And today we are going to be talking about what I wish I'd known when I started a ministry program. And I'm really excited to hear from them today, and I'm going to let each of them introduce themselves, and then we'll get started.
Okay, so my name is Hope Twitchell. I'm currently studying my Master of Divinity here at Southeastern University, and I am currently starting my 3rd year, and I will be graduating in the spring of April 2025.
Woohoo! Yay! Fun. I'm next.
Yeah.
Okay, well, my name is Reverend Callie Butler. I'm an ordained minister with the Assemblies of God. I currently serve on staff as an assistant pastor at Northside Assembly in Lakeland, Florida. And I am a year and probably 2 months graduated with my Master's of Divinity. So I no longer have to write papers, and it's splendid. I love it.
Yes. I'm Karissa King Eigenheis. Recently just got married in January and graduated in December. So I got my master's in family ministry.
Okay.
And I currently serve in Lakeland with an organization called Fellowship of Christian Athletes. And my title is essentially like I'm an ambassador, and I'm also a women's soccer coach.
Awesome. Very cool. Well, we are excited to have you ladies with us today. And so the first question that we're going to talk about is, what are 3 things that you wish you had known when you started your ministry programs?
Well, I'll start off by saying that I got my bachelor's in psychology, and so I was trained in APA style for 4 years. And even before coming into college, I was ready for APA. And I got really good at it, if I may say so myself. But I felt called during that degree, actually, towards ministry. And then so when I started my master's in divinity, I wasn't prepared for the world of Turabian. And I think we all can agree that it took us all by a bit of a shock when we started with it. But as an encouragement, it is definitely doable and manageable. It's just something I had been surprised with when I first started my master's. But on a more serious note, one thing that came to mind when we were mulling over this question was the reality that I had focused really most of my attention on my grades in my undergrad. I was really devoted to making sure that my grades were the best that I could make them. And when I started my master's, I kind of had that old mentality coming in with me. And not that getting good grades is a bad thing. I would never say that. It's really great.
Strive for excellence.
Highly recommend. But I realized that I had felt called to ministry for more than grades and for more than just having a good number on the piece of paper. And so I kind of wished when I'd started that from the get-go, I would have had the mindset of transformation. I want to be transformed through this degree and through what I study. I'm grateful that at this point I've come far enough and have had that realization. But for those who are looking into starting a ministry degree, having that outlook from the start, I think would really provide a kind of fresh perspective with each course that you maneuver. So, yeah, that's my thoughts.
I like that. Kind of makes me think of, when I first felt called into ministry and I came to college, I was super excited about my degree. I think back in the day it was called practical ministry, and I didn't want to kind of pigeonhole myself into maybe children's or youth. I wanted to give myself the most overall arching that would prepare me the best for any kind of form of ministry. But what I realized when I got into my classes is that I wish I had done like a biblical studies major almost, because, for me, I guess my perspective in growing up, I grew up as a pastor's kid. So I kind of had that practical knowledge just from watching my parents do ministry. And I was really lacking in my Bible and theology. And that's what I loved. Like, I thought I knew how to read the Bible, and then I got to college and I didn't.
It's so real.
So it just kind of opened the whole world, and like learning, like I had never opened a commentary before. I had never opened a Bible dictionary or, done word studies. What is that? What is Greek? What is Hebrew? We hear all these things in church, but I didn't like actually put it into practice. And so I really wish that I had kind of focused more on the Bible classes and the theology classes, because coming out of my undergrad, those are the ones that were the most impactful, and honestly the ones that I use the most in ministry right now, because you learn so much by experience, I guess, in your actual, wherever the Lord may place you in your occupation. But I wish I had dug more into Bible and theology and taken more of those types of classes.
Yeah, that's real.
I agree. Those were definitely my favorite classes as part of my degree, were the more like theology, systematic theos, and this is my theo too. I definitely learned and was stretched the most in those. Going back to your question though about like something I wish I had known before, I think just coming in with a different mindset. I think that would have been a game changer for me, because I came in thinking like, oh, I'm gonna like learn so much. Like I'm here, like I'm so excited to learn. But like I feel like the more I learned, the more I realized that how little I knew. I'm like, oh my gosh, I know nothing. Here I am like learning more. But ultimately, like I was so grateful for that though, because it made me rely on Jesus more, right? Because it just made myself like humble more, and then I had to like rely on Him so much more to get me through this degree at this point. I was
To build on that, actually, just on that thought of how, like, there's so much that we realized we didn't know, scripturally, theologically, historically, and I think that can be really shocking when you're coming into a ministry program. You think you have this call, and you're like, yeah, I'm just doing what God wants me to do, and then you're learning all sorts of things that you never would have actually considered prior to taking this degree or this course or whatever, and so I think it's important to have this awareness that you should be challenged, and you're going to be challenged, and it's going to stretch you in ways that perhaps you weren't expecting to be stretched before. So.
And hopefully you take that into your future of you're always learning, you're always being stretched, you're always growing, you're always being surprised by scripture, or surprised by people, or surprised by the Lord, I think.
I feel like making a surprised by joy reference right there.
I was thinking, so N.T. Wright has a book called Surprised by Scripture. And so I actually thought about that. So, a little book reference there. So it's a great book too. It's like a collection of essays. So I remember when I was in my undergrad ages and ages ago, actually here at Southeastern, I had a professor, Dr. Paul van der Laan, who was from the Netherlands. And he had a real thick Dutch accent. But I can remember being in class one day, and he was talking about, somebody asked him how many languages he spoke. And he spoke like 8 different languages fluently.
Wow.
Fluently. And we were all like, wow, that's so impressive. And he goes, yeah, but the more I know, the more I realize how much I don't know. And he was just so humble. And he had done so many really amazing things in his life. Like, he'd been president of the Assemblies of God in the Netherlands. He had like run a TV show about miracles. He'd done all these really cool things. And to hear him say that and be so humble just really impressed me as a student, that, here was this man of God who had done so many cool things, who also realized that he still had things to learn. Yeah. And so I think that really impacted me as a student, that there's always something else to learn.
Just a quick thought again on the fact, talking about the professors here at Southeastern specifically. I think from the get-go, it didn't take me long to realize just how humble and how welcoming these professors are. But really take advantage. It's so good to take advantage of these professors who are available to talk to have meals with, to ask your questions to reach out to by email or after class or whatever, because of exactly that, that their life experience, their studies, their wisdom they've gained through their studies and their life experiences, it's pretty profound how much they have to offer. And can do exactly that, leave something quite impressionable on you, maybe more impressionable than things you're actually learning in their courses sometimes. Sometimes the courses, it's fine, you gained what you needed to gain, but it actually was the interactions with that professor that ended up marking you more in your ministry. So
Absolutely. I think the professors helped in that sense of it taught you kind of that personal spiritual growth with when you go to college. Like I, stepped in thinking, I'm here to learn, I'm here to get a degree, I'm here to do X, Y, and Z. But really I wish I had honed in on the personal aspect of I'm here to grow in the Lord. I'm here to learn my call from him, who I am in him, kind of what he has for my future. And I love like what you brought up with the professors, because I think I had those moments. I can think back to like distinct conversations in professors' offices or after class where you were able to just talk to them, and they, they've walked the walk, they've been through the same experience, but they can also sit with you, discern with you, help you hear the voice of the Holy Spirit, that type of a thing. And I think those relationships that I had like that with those professors, I still have to this day, and I'm still able to call them, email them, Google Meet, post-COVID with them, and just be able to, do the same thing that you did in undergrad. So we have awesome professors here.
that's phenomenal.
Yeah.
Professors are great. I guess like a little word of warning. They will never, you ask them a question, and it's never like a yes or no or like a one-line response ever. I distinctly remember asking multiple questions in class, and then it's like 6 minutes later, it's like, did that help answer your question? You're like, yeah. But all that, and the way they do that, they answer that because they care, right? And they have all this knowledge, and you can't just wrap up an answer like that in a yes or no. It's just impossible.
We're thinking specifically of systematic theology.
Let me
That
response.
there were no one-word answers in that class.
But, we loved it and learned a lot. So.
Yeah, that was awesome.
That's good.
There's always caveats in theology.
Always. Not a theology class without them.
No, definitely not. My daughter's really into neurodivergent thought processes, and she showed me a reel somewhere recently, and I was like, see, all academics I think fall somewhere on the neurodivergent spectrum, because I was like, that's all my professor friends right there. That right there, that's all my professor friends.
Yes, that is so real.
That's funny.
It was funny.
That is.
Anyway, so if you could go back to day one of your ministry degree program and have one kind of tool in your back pocket, what would it be?
That's a great question.
Okay, something that's coming to mind that I did learn, I was really excited to learn. I had these expectations that I was going to read all the material. I found out very quickly it is impossible to read every single page of the material that you are assigned.
Really in a
for that
master's
8
program,
week-
for sure.
Yes,
Yes.
for a master's
But also
program
in an undergrad.
especially. And so I had to learn how to prioritize what I really need to be reading and what parts of the book to focus on to get the assignment and what I needed to get out of it. So I guess the tool would be learn how to prioritize your reading. We had something here, we call it the Hackett style. You read the first page, the last page, and a few of the key quotes throughout. But there's different ways to do that. There's
Definitely learning how to skim well.
learning how to pull out what is important. Yes. So.
Yep, that's a good one. I think for me, a tool I wish I had learned was slowing down in my master's. I was go. I was taking 2 classes every 8 weeks, and it was a lot. So I wish that I had taken breaks almost, the tool of Sabbath or the tool of rest.
Yeah.
I was reading all the pages. I did not skim well. Trying to do the assignments, writing the papers. And so I really wish that I had taken time to rest because when I started implementing a day off or something like that, it really does make you more productive. That's a scientific fact that I can't give you the quote for where, but it's true. But I wish I had taken more breaks and more rest, because it almost burns you out more. And I wanted to enjoy what I was reading. I wanted to enjoy writing papers, because I do enjoy those things. But I would be so exhausted that it just, pushed me to the edge.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are both really relatable points. I definitely, there were many times where I was sitting in the library and I was like, I need to read this many pages and I have to get through all of this stuff. And then I eventually realized, actually, let's look at what's being asked of us. Let's look at, if there's time to get the additional information, that's wonderful. If there's not, make a note. You'll study it after your degree. And fun fact, you're going to be in ministry the rest of your life. Right. So
always be applicable.
there's always going to be opportunity to read more on, we were just talking about Henry Nouwen the other day, read more on what he's done and written. So just an example. But then also with rest, I think I prefer to stay busy. I prefer the busy, go, get 5 hours of sleep and run off the caffeine kind of life. And Karissa can attest to that. But I also concur that finding that tool or utilizing that tool of making an effort to slow down, to rest, to whether that's taking less courses or that's just having a structured period of rest in your week by week. It's going to be far more valuable, I think, when you get to the end of your degree and you look back and you realize, I guess, how much fruit was produced because you took those rests, rather than looking back and thinking, oh, I wish that there was more. Right. I wish I'd taken more rest. I wish there was more fruit to show for that. I was going to crack a joke about wishing I had a tutor in my back pocket for some courses, because some of those classes we took, I took Hebrew last year, and I was going to the tutoring center on a weekly basis, or meeting up with my tutor on a weekly basis. And so in seriousness, taking advantage of resources is a benefit to you, I was pretty self-sufficient in my undergrad, and I was proud of that fact for being self-sufficient. But stepping into this MDiv, it was a whole new ballgame from what I'd literally been studying all these years prior. So I kind of needed to check myself and say, all right, there is more that you will get out of this if you're just willing to talk to people, to look into the resources provided, to ask someone, to help you, So I would say that's on a more personal note of just recognizing what
academics can be pretty humbling.
Very quickly.
Yes, it can.
That's why there's this glorious program I learned about called Zotero that does your citations for you.
You still have to be careful, though. It still doesn't always get them right.
I know. That's why I have to go back through them and double check it, but that saved me a lot of time in paper writing.
It definitely is a very helpful aid. Very, very helpful.
It is.
So,
the library's your friend. The librarians want to help you.
Yes, and we have some wonderful scholars over in the library, I feel, that have plenty to contribute to the topics that you might be researching and whatnot. So, not to mention the countless commentaries and dictionaries and everything else, word studies that are available
Physical,
there.
online.
Yes, everything. They have everything. So, definitely take advantage of that.
Yeah, all the resources that your school has available, wherever you may be.
It's true.
It won't last forever.
That's true. Yeah, you won't always have access to it.
No. That's so real. I actually, every time I go to the library and check out a commentary or whatever for whatever paper I'm working on, I usually will bring home at least 2 additional books that I just happen to find on the shelf that looked interesting, purely for my entertainment and my enjoyment. Because I'm there and I'm like, hey, it looks good. I might as well grab it while I'm here. So
listen, the public library does not have that amount of commentaries. No. They don't have really any commentaries.
That's why you should ask for commentaries for your birthday and Christmas, or if people do book giveaways from their degrees and they sell them for $5, take them all.
That is so real.
So that was going to be my next tip was for while you're in your program, or my next question is while you're in your program, what tips do you have? So there's a tip for your birthdays and Christmas. Ask for commentaries. Yep. You can also watch like Amazon. If you like Kindle versions of commentaries, they'll sometimes do like $2 and $3 and $5 versions of some of the really good commentaries on Kindle. There's a group online that I'm a part of where like this one guy like specifically watches just for the commentaries, and he'll post when they go on sale. Listen, I've probably spent more than I should have on Kindle commentaries just because I'm like, oh, it's only $3. Done. Now I have it. You know,
It's brilliant.
Yeah.
$3 here and there doesn't feel like that much. So
No, it doesn't.
Especially when commentaries are definitely
yeah,
over
like
$3.
Definitely over $3. Yeah.
Yes.
It's not good.
That's so real.
Tips.
Tips from for someone who's in there or
Yeah,
going into their
like now that you're in the program, what's something you should do?
This might be over planning, maybe not, but back to when we were talking about how much reading that you have to do and writing your papers, I would literally like section out my textbooks of like how many pages I needed to read this day and that day and that day to get me to the point where I could then write my paper. But I had these I love sticky notes. I'm a paper hand girl. I couldn't do a Kindle.
Yes.
I wish I could. I cannot do a Kindle. But I take sticky notes and I kind of write down points that stand out to me, or like a summary of the page, or like kind of the page that I was writing, and that really helped me when I finished the chapter or something to go back and write everything that I needed to write, if it was a critique or a summary or a comparison or something like that, or a paper in general. So section out your chapters, so to speak, and use sticky notes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Summarizing as you go is a really great idea.
Yeah. It definitely is more expensive, but I think it's worthwhile to buy your books as you go through your courses because you can mark them up, you can write in them. More often than not. Not every book is necessary to buy, but there are so many that are worth engaging with, and it's much easier to engage from the text when you can actually mark up the text. We talk about like annotation, I think, in high school. You learn how to annotate text and whatever, but it's the same idea when you get into your master's, and it's all that more applicable too when you say down the line. I've got books I'm referencing now going into my third year that I read in my first year, and it's like so helpful to look back over the notes I'd written in the margins and be like, oh yeah, that's right, that was that point, there was that conversation, that whatever. So yeah, that's one thought for just preparing practically.
For me, there's 2 tips that are coming to mind. The first one is to make sure you're prioritizing prayer. Like, that was huge for me. Like, I can't tell you, like, how many assignments where, like, maybe I was feeling a little overwhelmed before, but then I'm like, we're going to pray before I, start and dive into this, make sure, our heart posture is in the right place. And then, like, I can't even tell you, like, how many times, like, I have, like, had an encounter with God, like, through my schoolwork. I'm like, that's really cool. Yeah. Right? To be, like, pursuing a higher education, but then also, like, encountering God, like face to face. I felt like several times.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to think of and then my other one was to make sure to incorporate some sort of rest. We kind of mentioned it before, whether it's just like 4 consecutive hours where you're like, I'm not going to think about my homework. I'm going to go on a run and I'm going to call my family or something. Like, I'm not going to have my mind occupied thinking about what I need to be doing, and just letting yourself do that, right? Because your mind's going to always think, oh, I should be doing this. Like, nope, you're going to block off these 3 hours, and that's my Sabbath. So definitely.
I made myself do something fun every week because I would feel guilty for not doing my homework or like reading. I could be reading right now or something like that. So I made myself do something fun to rest and take a break.
That's really good.
It's not easy though.
Well, there's always so much to do.
Yeah.
Just another thought got me thinking about that. Really make an effort to connect. I would tell people to make sure you're connecting with your classmates. Fun fact, Karissa and Callie and I all were classmates at one point, which is super cool because now here we are down the line and still able to be in touch and catch up and all that. But in the moment, it makes the experience of studying and growing in your walk that much more tangible, that much more joyful. Yeah, honestly, it's the fun part of it too. You have fun obviously when you're not studying. But there's also entertainment and enjoyment and a thrill to being with your peers and people who actually not just your peers. There are people who are 2 decades or so older than us, doing our degrees with us, virtually and whatnot. But you can just have some of the most fabulous conversations and I don't know, just really experience what it is to study the word in community. You know? So. Yeah,
definitely.
I feel like I made my strongest friendships in grad school, honestly, and people I still talk to in ministry. And you mentioned the age difference. Like in undergrad, you're with the people mostly same age, kind of same walk of life. But there's so much beauty to the fact that in grad school, you're thrown into a room, Zoom or in person, with a plethora of people, experiences, backgrounds. And so the class conversation, I feel like, is so different than it was in undergrad. And it was really enriching and, challenged us, but also we, laughed together, we cried together, struggled to write papers together, typing in like group chats as we're listening to lectures because, you need the support.
The modern day version of passing notes in class.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
That's true.
That just reminds me of a really quick story. Karissa, you were here for this one. When we were in a online class, and we met once a week over Zoom. And we were in a small, you would go into breakout groups or breakout sessions or whatever during class to have better dialogue and discussion. And in our group were 3 men. It was Chris and I, and then 3 men who were all in their 40s or above, maybe 50s, honestly, and doing their degrees for maybe chaplaincy or whatever else they were doing. Yeah. And you would think, like, for Karissa and I, who are in our 20s, like, that's an interesting combination. What in the world are we going to actually talk about? We got, lots of gaps maybe in the generational perspectives on what's interesting to talk about and whatnot. But I think we had a really fabulous time. And actually, one of our conversations resulted in us giving advice to these men and how to
wives,
how to interact with their wives and their daughters. And it was the most phenomenal thing because the following week they came back and said, "Hope, Karissa, we used that technique and it worked." Yeah. And I was like, "Why are we surprised? Of course it worked.
That's funny.
We understand each other. We're women." So it was a really just funny memory, but a perfect example of that interaction and the beauty that comes from being in a program that has such diversity of ages in it. So,
that does make a big difference. All right, so speaking of perspective of women, as a female ministry student, what was probably the biggest challenge you faced as a female ministry student in your program?
For me, I felt like there were less females, and especially for an MDiv degree. Maybe that's changed recently, but I feel like there were less females in that degree. And also kind of with the age plethora that we're, having these classes with and these discussions with, I felt like in our times of discussion or talking about different biblical passages or theological concepts, stuff like that, we kind of got hit on certain, passages that people struggle with women. And so I'm, in my young 20s, I'm passionate. I, take the word. I know it. Here, let us discuss it. But I found it more difficult, almost like a timidness, honestly, to talk to my male classmates, especially those who are older, maybe my dad's age, and like, what do I have to bring to the table? Why are they going to listen to me, a little 20-year-old girl, getting her master's? So I felt like I almost was subordinating myself a little bit and had to really be confident in, no, I have something to share. I have something to contribute. And if we disagree on a passage of scripture or a theological concept, that's okay. We're here to discuss. We're here to grow. We're here to learn how to talk to one another. And like, I can hear from your perspective and you can hear from mine. So that was harder, I think, and I wasn't expecting that. And it was not something I really experienced in my undergrad. But I don't know if it was me getting in my head and kind of like making myself a little timid. I don't know. But I would say that was a little hard. But Yeah,
I experienced that in a sort of a similar way, and where I think there'd be opportunities for discussion, whatever, and I would notice myself that if there were a predominant number of males in that particular class setting. I think I'm feeling it the most right now in my Greek class. It's definitely majority men in that class, and given the fact that it's a new language to me, I feel particularly less confident than I normally do, and I find myself kind of preferring to sit in the background. It really is actually, it takes a lot for me to push myself and say, no, like, just you're an equal here. You're an equal here. Like, just keep remembering that. Like, there's no gap here. They're probably just as confused as you are, to be honest.
They probably are.
You know? Their pronunciation is, it's all right.
Nobody knows how to pronounce ancient Greek. We're all just making it up as we go.
Right. So, I mean, there is that slight sense, like you said, almost like a timidness that I think is good to be challenged. I think it's an opportunity to step out. And so I think I've noticed more so that I've grown in wanting to challenge. So maybe almost to a fault, because sometimes I'll get into little debates with my guy friends in the classrooms, and it'll get a little warm in there, and people are like, oh, are you okay, Hope? And I'm like, oh, I'm great. I thought we were just like pulling this situation apart, But I also feel like there's a slight uncomfortableness for them when it gets to certain kinds of conversations. Say, like, I don't know, say you're dissecting the Song of Songs, for example. It gets really uncomfortable for the men to be dissecting that with you. Whereas I'm fine. I'd love to pull this piece of scripture apart. But so those kinds of things I think are interesting.
Yeah. There's nothing that's like popping out to me that like there was a moment where I felt like I was inhibited in some way for being a female or anything like that. I would say the only thing, like we've talked about the age differences that were in the class. And, I was raised, like, you respect people who are older than you, they have more wisdom. And, like, I, for one, loved, like, that was my favorite things about the classroom was the diversity of ages we have. I loved learning from the stories they had to tell and share. And so I personally kind of had no problem letting people speak first and observing and listening to what they had to say. But then I would also, chime into the conversation, right? It was going both ways. And so I guess, so just encouragement, you can still, like, speak up, but there's also, I don't think there's anything wrong with letting someone go first as well.
Yeah.
So
I think that's really true. There's no problem in waiting and listening and hearing. In fact, if you're really listening well, that actually going to end up being a real benefit to you and what you've gained from that course. Yeah. So, that's really true.
Okay, so let's wrap up with how would you encourage a young female ministry student stepping onto campus for the first time ever, whether it's in an undergrad or a graduate program this fall? What would you say to her?
I think I'd start by saying be bold. Be bold in your questions and in your pursuit and in your calling, and look to the Lord to be your strength, but know that you're going forward in obedience. And if you're looking to Him, then just know that it's his boldness, it's his strength, it's his peace that's guarding you, But be bold.
I'll continue the B theme. I'd say be yourself. Don't try to act super, super smart or, I don't know, like, I don't feel like I was I didn't feel intelligent, I guess, when I came into classes, and I didn't want to try to pretend to be. So I kind of, knew what my strengths were, and I brought those to the table in my degree. And I feel like the Lord utilized those strengths, but then also kind of grew some weaknesses that I had and that type of a thing. So I think just being yourself, like be yourself around your classmates, get to know people, that type of a thing, and just let the Lord kind of grow you and see how you are shaped and molded through this academic experience, because you're going to come out a stronger, more confident, more intelligent person on the other end. But, why would you try to pretend to be someone else? Like, let who you are be enhanced in the Lord and keep going. So
good.
That's really good. For me, a piece of advice, I would say find a really good female mentor. Someone who's like at least probably like 6 years minimum older than you. That was something I didn't really have consistently. I had like on and off here and there, but having like a consistent female mentor that you're able to talk to or like at least schedule like once a month, like check in, I think that is just life-changing. Yeah. It really is, for like accountability, for growth, for discouragement, encouragement, just, you know, choosing wisely, because that was something I learned too, is like you as the younger, you choose your mentor. Like sometimes the mentor chooses you, but usually it's like you choosing your mentor. And so like go out and like find someone that is, you know, willing to love on you during that season. So
Definitely.
That's really good.
I'll give one piece of advice. Be engaged in your local church community. I think that sometimes we get so caught up in what's going on campus that we forget that there's a community outside of campus. And it can be really helpful sometimes to step away from campus and listen, let some older people at your church bake you some cookies and invite you over for dinner and to worship with others in a setting that's not a campus setting. Because especially as a ministry student, if we're going into ministry, then we need to be engaged in ministry outside of campus as we're going through our ministry programs. So as a discipleship pastor, I feel like I have to say, you need to be engaged in your, you got to be engaged in your local church community. But I think it's really important too, because it helps you kind of keep yourself rooted in the church, capital C. So
Amen.
That's good.
That is good.
So, all right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, ladies. It has been a pleasure chatting with you, and maybe we'll get to do it again someday.
Well, thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah,
It's been
absolutely.
fun.
Thanks.